Muse. It is I, Jack Wallen. If you know my name, you're my muse. If you didn't know my name, I would worry about you, because you've been with me for what? Since high school? Since the... I didn't say anything. You didn't hear anything. Anyway, I'm not here to discuss my age, whether it be appropriate or not. But I do have something interesting to talk about, something quite different that will surprise you and will surprise many a reader and writer. Not really, I don't know. Is it possible to surprise or shock anybody these days? I don't believe so. I think we've reached a point where nothing is shocking. Anyway, I often get asked by both readers and writers how it is that I write so quickly. Again, not patting myself on the back. It's not who I am. This is all in the name of enlightenment, as it were. I have been of mind for a very long time in most of the things that I do in my life that the key to success is efficiency. And until you can reach a certain level of efficiency, success is going to be a bit of a challenge. And I do everything I can, everything in my power, especially with my art, to make it efficient. And I don't mean in any way, shape, or form to slight the craft of any art by applying an efficiency to it. Well, let me explain myself, if I can, if it's possible. I don't just write fiction. I also write nonfiction, and I've been writing nonfiction since about 1999. And my nonfiction, is generally in the form of tech writing. And I write a lot in that realm, a considerable amount. And over the years, what has happened with my nonfiction writing is that it has become an incredibly efficient process. So I can write article after article after article, documentation after documentation after documentation in a very quick way. And when I first started writing fiction, I always made sure to separate those two, because one I felt was an art and the other was not. The other was more in the way of a business. And never the twain shall meet. But at some point along the way, they started to kind of come together a bit. And not so much in the actual words that I was writing, but in the process in which I write those words. And I realized that I could borrow the efficiency of my nonfiction writing and the art to borrow it to my fiction writing, and then borrow the craft of my fiction writing and apply it to my nonfiction writing. So when those two sort of came together, anytime I was writing, I was forwarding my craft. I was practicing my craft. I was bettering my skills. And I believe that very firmly. I do not think, and I think it's a mistake to think that the only way that you can improve the craft of writing is to be writing in the genre or the domain in which you love and normally write. I think that you're missing out. I think that there are so many things to learn. So many things to be found in other genres, be they fiction or nonfiction. And it's just like I always tell new writers to not just read, but read outside of your genre. Because you're going to learn new tricks. and new ways of saying things and forming ideas and new ways of telling stories. And the same goes for the actual act of writing. Write outside of your genre. Write outside of fiction. Write how-tos, write cookbooks, write all sorts of things, because you're going to eventually find that those two blend together and they start to help one another. And so, I mean, if you think about it, and I say this quite often, that the shorter the piece, the more difficult it is. So a full-length novel is much easier than a novella, which is much easier than a short story, which is much easier than a piece of flash fiction. The smaller they get, the harder they are. It's just like in acting. Monologues are really difficult because you only have a short amount of time to tell a story, and tell a story effectively. So I think it is important to regularly write something short. And that doesn't mean doesn't have to be a short story. It could be a poem. It could be an article. It could be a how-to. It could be a cookbook. It could be anything. Just write. And get outside of your comfort zone. Because that comfort zone, what it does is it pins us in. It hems us in. And it makes us continue to write the same things over and over and over and over and over again. Break out of that fence and write something different. And write every day. Every day I write nonfiction and fiction. So for about 7 hours a day, I'm writing. Sometimes it's 5 hours a day. But I'm writing hours every day. I probably write, between my fiction and my nonfiction, I probably write anywhere up to around 5,000 words a day. So if you're doing that constantly and consistently, you are always improving your skills. And if you're doing it in multiple genres and multiple styles, you're constantly pushing your own envelope well outside what you normally might write. And it might be, you might even go so far as to say, hey, I'm a horror writer. I'm going to go write a romance novel. Why? Because when you write a romance novel, you might learn how people interact in different ways. If you write a how-to of fixing a lawnmower engine, you're not only going to learn how to write efficiently, incredibly efficiently, because you have to write efficiently when you're writing that kind of documentation. You're also going to learn how something works, and you might end up putting that in one of your stories. Never sell yourself so short. Never settle for less. Always be pushing yourself, and not just pushing yourself in the same way. It's just like when you exercise. You can, and I'm guilty of this. You can exercise, and you can do the same exercise over and over and over and over again, and you're going to eventually plateau. And that plateau, now you can keep yourself healthy even at that plateau, but you're never going to rise above it. Now, I for the last 5 months, I've been doing nothing but a rowing machine, and I know that I will probably reach a plateau and not be able to go above it, so I have to figure something else out to do. But with your writing, it's very simple. You write something different. Write a piece of flash fiction. Write a how-to. Even if that how-to isn't used for anything. But you've got to practice. And you've got to practice regularly. Otherwise, your skills are never going to improve. And you want your skills to improve in any possible way they can. Does that make sense, Muse? And don't think for a second that I believe that you don't help me, you don't inspire my nonfiction, because I know you do. Every so often you creep in there and I write something that a normal a nonfiction writer would write within a piece of documentation or whatever, and I think, oh, there you are, Muse. So I know you're there. But anyway, I hope that explains a little bit, and I hope it helps somebody. maybe inspires you to go on a how-to bend. I don't know. Anyway, I'm talked out. I'm tapped out. I gotta go. In fact, I'm going to go eat some lunch because my stomach is starting to grumble. And I don't want you to have to listen to my stomach grumble. And now I'm rambling. I shouldn't be rambling. I got to stop. Stop me, Muse. Stop me. Please stop me. Stop me from going on. I can't stop it. I can't help myself.